Speed stacks, WSSA, come on, guys. So by now I'm sure everyone watching this already knows about the drama that's going on, but for those of you who don't know, yesterday the WSSA came out with an announcement about the new G5 timer setup. And at the same time, the WSSA and SpeedStacks made announcement videos about the new product on their YouTube channels. And as you can see, the community has responded very positively to it. Everybody loves it, nobody hates it, and there's nothing but good things to say about it. Okay, so clearly people have an issue with this, but why? What could change so much from a new integration into the sport? Well, apparently, the last 40 years of sports stacking. So when this announcement came out yesterday, I knew I wanted to make a video about it, but I wanted to hold off a little bit, given everything that's going on, so I could process exactly how I feel about it. I didn't want to make like a gut reaction video. I just wanted to see if I still felt the same way about the product the next day. And yeah, I still don't like it. I'm gonna go over the entire announcement video, but I also don't want to just completely lambaste this product. I want to give like a full in-depth review. I'm gonna cover all the good, the bad, and the even worse about the product. So let's just dive right in.
From the beginning, the WSSA has had rules that prohibit touching cups when you start the timer, holding cups when you stop the timer, and using wrists and or arms to start and or stop the timer.
Okay, so it is true that they did have rules preventing people from holding the cups or touching the cups or stopping the timer with their wrists. But the tone that I get from this video is that they're acting like this is only a problem because people are getting faster, when in reality, people have been breaking these rules for years now, and they've only now just started to crack down on it. Like if you look at Emily Fox's 7:43 world record, she's holding the cups when she finishes it. So technically that should be a scratch, but it wasn't called. And you can even look back at other previous world records, and those are also just as questionable. And that was back when sports stacking wasn't even close to the speed it is now. So I think it's a little unfair to just claim that these rules are just becoming a problem now, since people are getting faster when they've always been a problem.
And because stackers keep getting faster, it's becoming harder and harder to see these infractions. And as a result, the rulings have become more controversial.
So while I do agree that it is harder to see infractions when it comes to scratches of these types, I don't think that what they did to fix it was the right call.
The WSSA has been working on a solution for a long time. We considered just eliminating these rules, but that only creates different problems that are just as hard to judge, so it wouldn't reduce the number of scratched attempts.
Okay, I've watched this part of the video so many times, and I still have no idea what they're talking about. So they're saying if we got rid of these rules that caused all of these scratches, then there would be even more problems, which would result in the same number of scratches as there are now. I don't know what that means. Like, I would think that getting rid of the rules that cause all these scratches would cause even less scratches. I think that makes sense. And what do they mean just as hard to judge? There'd be less things to judge. Like, the only thing that would happen if you got rid of these rules would be that less people would get scratches, which I think is the point of this whole thing. These rules are also what I consider to be a big problem because in the rulebook, they're very non-descriptive and vague as to what certain terms like a hold means. Like, does a hold just mean if you're barely touching two opposite sides of a cup by the end? And when can you determine if the time stops so that a hold doesn't count anymore? And it's also very hard to tell from current camera angles that are used in tournaments if a stacker is actually holding a cup or using their wrist to stop the timer. So it's not like the current rules are any good either, so I don't know why they didn't just focus on the rules instead of what they are doing in this video, which we'll get to in a little bit. This whole thing just reminds me of that issue back in like 2010 when, as stackers were getting faster, it was really hard to tell if they were tapping the cups on the mat before they downstacked the 1-10-1. So in order to fix that issue, they did get rid of those rules, and everyone loved it. There was no issue there, so I don't understand what they mean by getting rid of these rules would cause even more problems.
We realized that if stackers have to place their thumbs on the back side of the timer to start and stop it, then there's no way they can hold cups or start and stop the timer with their wrists. Based on this principle, we developed a new timer with 4 touchpads, 2 for the fingers and 2 for the thumbs.
Okay, so clearly there's an issue here. And that issue is that this new design basically detriments anyone who starts the timer by putting the sides of their hands on the timer instead of their palms or their fingers, because all those people would have to learn how to adapt to this new timing setup, which is just going to be frustrating to those people who have learned how to do that because it makes them faster. But now the WSSA just says that those stackers can't do that anymore. And compared to that rule change in 2010 where they got rid of the requirement that you had to tap the cups to the mat, that rule made the sport faster, but this is just going to make it slower, which seems kind of counterproductive to a sport that's all about speed.
The reset and power buttons have a new reinforced design that won't wear through. And to prevent these buttons from accidentally getting pressed when a timer is slammed, you just hold them for a half a second.
All right, so this part just really confused me because I thought it would be obvious if you really want to get rid of any timer resets or turn-offs during times, then why don't you just put the power button and the reset button on the back of the timer instead of these new unnecessary thumb sensors? This also just slows down any practice session because now stackers will have to wait even longer for their timer to reset. And when you slow down practice time, you're just going to slow down tournament times. And unfortunately, I'm starting to sense a theme here of slowing the sport down.
The G5 timer can be used in 2 different modes, 4-pad mode and 2-pad mode. 4-pad mode is for stacking, and 2-pad mode is for speed cubing.
Okay, this part was just kind of funny to me because I thought this would have been obvious that the 4-pad mode would be much more useful for speed cubers who already have to start with their hands on the table, and then the 2-pad mode would be much more useful for stackers who at this point don't have to start with their palms on the tables. It just would have made a lot more sense if they marketed this the other way around.
And the new snap-in button system eliminates problems with timers getting knocked sideways off the mat. Just snap it down into place and it's rock solid.
Okay, so this part was interesting because at first I did think this was a good idea to not have the timer move as much, but then I thought a little more and then I just realized that they're just redoing the technique that they did with the Gen 2 timer where they had magnets snap the timer into place, as opposed to just having the timer slide on like the Gen 3 and the Gen 4 timers do.
Just remember, because of the new button system, G5 timers are not compatible with older mats.
So now you need to get a new timer, but you also need to get a new mat? This is just reminding me of that rule that you couldn't use logoless cups in tournament anymore, because once your cups lose their logos, you immediately have to buy a new set. It just seems like a rule change that requires you to buy more equipment, which some people can't do.
The tournament display cord plugs in underneath the timer so it won't get in the way or accidentally get unplugged like we sometimes see at tournaments.
Alright, this was the weirdest focus of the new setup for me, at least, because I don't think anybody's really had an issue with the displays turning off in tournament. Like, no one was ever really worrying that the wire was gonna come unplugged for like a second, because the worst thing that would happen is there'd just be that awkward moment where the display turns off and you don't know what the time is until someone would come and plug it back in, and then everything would be fine. And also, no one really ever got scratched because of that, so this just seems like a weird thing to add on. I don't know, it's just kind of unnecessary to me.
The G5 timer will be available worldwide on May 1st, 2021, and will be required at WSSA sanctioned tournaments on September 1st, 2021.
And there it is, the big reveal. I can at least sort of understand why they think this would work, because they've done this in the past where they've upgraded their equipment and then required that equipment to be used in tournaments. But the difference is those changes were so minor in the past. When they upgraded from Gen 2 to Gen 3, they got rid of the magnets. When they upgraded to the Pro, they added another decimal point to times. When they upgraded to Gen 4, they made the hand pads rounder, which is kind of the least significant change since nobody really starts with the palms of their hands anymore. The point is that these changes were so minor that even if you couldn't afford to buy the new equipment, you could still use your old equipment and it wouldn't really act as a detriment when you go to a tournament and compete with that new equipment. I mean, back in 2017, Mike McCoy was still using a Gen 2 timer at home. But now this is completely changing the way the sport is played. This would be like telling every runner that does the 100-meter dash that instead of the starting position that they do now, they have to start in a standing position, and if their hands touch the ground, then their time wouldn't count. Like, these people spend so much time trying to get used to a starting position that will ultimately make them faster, but now, because of some rule change, it's just going to make everyone slower.
You are now allowed to have contact with cups when starting and stopping the timer. You're still not allowed to hold cups, but with your hands in the proper position on the timer, it's not possible to hold cups or use your wrists or arms to start and or stop the timer. This is good news because live judging will be much more accurate and you won't have to fear that your runs might get scratched for starting and stopping hand positions.
Yes, it is good news, except that now everyone's times are going to be slower, which they acknowledge immediately after they say this. But hey, now everyone's times will be undeniably clean, so it's all good, I guess.
Because we expect stacking times with the new timer to be a little slower at first, the WSSA has also decided to do a records reset. All current records will be frozen and kept as legacy records, and will remain accessible on the WSSA website.
I am totally shocked that this is what they decided to do. So let me rephrase this. Basically, there have been stackers that have spent years, even half their lives, just working at the sport and getting faster and faster and getting all of these records that they've worked so hard for. But now the WSSA is coming around and saying, that's nice, but those don't count anymore, and they're just starting from scratch. I mean, what a slap in the face to all these stackers that have worked so hard, and especially to the stackers who don't stack anymore, because now with this records reset, they won't even have any times in tournament anymore. All they'll have is these legacy records, which is really just a title at the end of the day. They're just retconning the last 40 years of sports stacking. And it gets even worse because they're trying to frame this as a positive.
And the records reset opens up new opportunities for everyone to set records.
But the problem is that I fear that nobody's going to want to go to tournaments anymore because of these new rules. You completely miss the mark of what you are trying to do. In addition, this whole situation just gets even worse the deeper you dig into it, because apparently at a juniors tournament, SpeedStacks gave certain Team USA members a prototype of the G5 timer that included the thumb pads just to get feedback and see what they thought. And the prototype got almost unanimously negative feedback. But apparently SpeedStacks and the WSSA didn't take any of that into consideration because the thumb pads are still on there. So what was the point of even asking Team USA members? And if you're trying to make the sport better, why wouldn't you listen to the opinions of the top stackers in the country? It just doesn't make any sense. Just like most of this doesn't make any sense. So to SpeedStacks and the WSSA, I understand that you guys want to try to make the sport better. And it's clear from this video that you guys think that one of the things that will help make the sport better is by making the rules clearer, and that's fine. Unfortunately, you're not really interacting with the people that are going to be buying and using your products the most, and that's going to end up being detrimental to the sport as a whole. You're taking stackers who love to stack, and you're making them not even want to go to tournaments anymore, or even be a part of the community anymore. And they're not alone in this. People are agreeing with what they're saying. So here's my proposal. If you guys really want to improve the sport by making it clearer about when scratches are actually happening, improve the cameras. Use cameras with a higher frame rate so it'll be easier to tell when a stacker actually scratches, instead of just leaving it up to guesswork when you can't really tell because a stacker's going too fast. Or if you don't want to do that, then how about this? Position the cameras up at a higher angle so it'll be way easier to see a stacker's hands when they start and finish a sequence. Or you can even do this. You can have the cameras in front like you already do, and then require a tournament volunteer to film the stacker from the side so you can clearly see what their hands are doing as they start and finish a sequence. And you can even have them record it in a high frame rate slow-mo video, which I know is really easy because slow-mo has been on the iPhone since the iPhone 6, which came out more than 6 years ago. Or if none of that works, then just change the rules. Make the rules more lenient. Allow stackers to hold cups. But whatever you do, you shouldn't require a large majority of stackers who don't scratch because of wrist stops or holding cups to change the way they stack just to make things easier. In conclusion, speed stacks, WSSA, I don't think that this was a good idea at all. Most of the things you wanted to accomplish with this new announcement only backfired because you're not listening to the people who are going to be using your products the most. And I do sort of understand that there might be a point when I watch this video down the line and think that it was ridiculous that anybody was complaining about this, but for now, it's just very disappointing. Changing the way that the sport works just to make things easier isn't going to make things easier, it's just going to make things worse. And I don't think that you guys should wipe out the years and years of times and practice that people have put into this sport just to fix one problem that was only started because you guys weren't following your own rules in the first place. So hopefully you guys like this video. I just had some stuff I wanted to get off my chest about this. Thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Also, I'm just now realizing that their Arctic Fox timer that they released during Christmas time is now completely irrelevant 2 months after it was released. And that would be really funny if it just wasn't so sad at the same time.